welcome to another episode of Tiny Nest. I'm Kiva.
And I'm Jake. This series is following our tiny house project from the early stages through to completion and beyond.
This episode is about insulating our roof.
As you can see, we've made a lot of progress since our last episode, and we're just catching up on editing some videos now.
Keep in mind that neither of us have ever built a roof before, so the order in which we did the steps may seem a little bit unusual, but if you bear with us through the next couple episodes, you'll see how it all came together.
We're attaching the furring strips to the bottom of the roof joists now, and they're just strips that we cut down on the table saw of the 3/4 inch plywood that we had left over from the subfloor. And the purpose of these is to allow us to drop the insulation down away from the roof sheathing so that there can be an air gap to allow ventilation up there. The Roxol insulation that we're going to use is exactly the right depth to fill the entirety of a 2x6 cavity. So without these, it would be tight to the top and tight to the bottom. But adding this and dropping the bottom allows us to drop the top surface of the insulation away from that roof sheathing. If we were to install the roof sheathing and then put the insulation in from below, it would be hard to maintain the gap between the sheathing and the insulation because we couldn't really see how far we were pushing the insulation up. And we could use a baffling product of some kind to create that gap, but we figured it might be just as easy to push the insulation down from above before we put the sheathing on, so that we can see and maintain the gap that we want, and then put the sheathing over top. So I'm just installing this tie wire, which is just a steel wire, just stapling it to the underside of the furring strips that we've put up so that we can push the insulation down and it'll have something to rest on, and we can make that gap and then install the sheathing afterwards. To make sure that the surface stays flush, we put little notches in that we can lay the wire in when we staple. We've begun insulating the roof with the same 5.5 inch Roxol insulation that we used for the floor. And on the front, it just works a bit better if there's the same angle as the roof is cut onto the end of the piece. So I'm starting with that. Like we said earlier, we're putting the insulation in from above so we can monitor how much of a gap we're leaving. And that tie wire that we put in is doing a pretty good job of keeping it from sagging in the bottom. So I'll just put this piece in, you can see what we're doing. I've been pushing it down until there's about 3/4 to an inch of space above, and then we'll go below and straighten it out down there. I've been trying to get it nice and flush with the surface of the ceiling, and I found that this scraping tool works super well to get it inside, and then you can just kind of pull that edge down and then go back over it and sort of fluff it into position. Been taking a lot of care to try to get it nice and flush so that there's no air gaps and it's tight to the the other side of the ceiling. We were really lucky because although we didn't plan it, 2 bats fills precisely the distance between the 2 top plates, so we don't have to do any extra cutting. And because all tiny houses are roughly the same width, it should be pretty easy to make this work in another design, as long as it's got a shed roof like this.
Taking a break up in the loft. Finally got all of the roof insulation in. Just left a couple spots down there for the smoke alarm and a light that's going to be in the kitchen.
We're finishing the insulation in the ceiling, and the only two things that are up there are a smoke detector box and a box for a light. And normally you wouldn't put in any electrical before the roof is actually on and the building is dry. But because we're putting the insulation on before we're putting the roof on, we're doing this now. The weather's really good, and we're going to put the roof on right after this. I'll go over more electrical stuff later, but because we're doing this now, I just wanted to note that the little tabs on any electrical box, any plastic box like this, are meant for 1/2-inch drywall. But if you're doing something like 1/4-inch pine or any kind of wood siding that's thinner, which we are, these tabs will stand the box off too much and it'll end up protruding past the surface of the wall. So for these tabs, I'm just breaking them off with my pliers. These ones I'm going to leave on because I can put a little shim in there and actually make that flush against the wood. But these guys will help me put it up to the right depth. Any electrical boxes that you put in an outside wall or in the ceiling where above it is an attic or something similar needs to have a vapor boot of some kind over it. And you can either get a box that has some weather stripping already part of the manufacturing, or just a regular one and add your own vapor boot after. And the ones that have it manufactured are much easier to use, but when you have the control of putting your own boot and then taping it yourself, you can get a much better seal. And so I chose to do that because there's only two, so I wanted to take the time to make sure that the seal was really good.